Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week, I continue my 6-part series on the Realms of Pugmire by talking about the Pirates of Pugmire. Now, these are not pirates in the historical sense. These are the explorers seeking brave new lands and occasionally shooting at other ships and taking booty. That's more or less how they are. But sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about those who ply the acid sea. The acid sea is not just a extravagant term. It's not an exaggeration. The sea itself will eat through a wooden-hulled vessel. And so, the ships that ply the acid sea have a outer hull lining of plastic. This prevents the acid from eating through. It will still eat through the plastic even, eventually, but it takes much, much longer. And whenever a ship returns back to port, it's a simple matter of just reapplying the plastic coating, repairing any hull damage that the ship might have suffered. Of course, speaking of ports, there are 2 main ports in the Realms of Pugmire. Waterdog Port, which is the independent port that was once part of the Kingdom of Pugmire, but had since declared itself independent due to its wealth and ability to defend itself. And then there is Port Matthew, which is part of the Monarchies of Mau, and it is House Rex that dominates the control of them. Both cities are more or less egalitarian. Dogs, cats, lizards, rats are welcome in all of them. Birds, not so much in Port Matthew. But birds are equally welcome, are totally welcome in Waterdog Port. And these 2 ports have a great rivalry. They used to actually be enemies before the War of Dogs and Cats. But they were forced, so to speak, to engage in more diplomatic forms of rivalry than attacking each other. And so, they do lots of friendly competitions and not so friendly competitions between each other. And each kind of fits the world in its own separate way. The Waterdog Port is, of course, Waterdog Port is more or less what you would think of an old pirate port being like. Anyone's welcome. Meanwhile, Port Matthew, people are welcome as long as they're not treading on the laws of the Monarchies of Mau. The 2 cities both have their own Seafarers Guild. And in fact, the Seafarers Guild might be the same guild between both of them. But they kind of dispute which one had the first Seafarers Guild Hall. Of course, as I mentioned, ships need plastic on their hulls. And both of these ports are important for doing that. for relining the hulls to keep the acid from eating through. Now, out on the acid sea, there are 2 new species, sort of, that are encountered. Birds and lizards. Birds are broken down into parrots, crows, and sparrows. These are not based on their actual species. You could have a crow that's a parrot. You could have a parrot that's a sparrow. What they define these as is not these bird species. Instead, it is based entirely on whether or not they can fly. Parrots are too big to fly. Crows can glide. And sparrows can fly. The lizards are divided between geckos, snakes, and turtles. Geckos are pretty much chameleons. Serpents are, well, serpents have snake lower bodies, but they have arms on their upper bodies. And, of course, turtles are, well, turtles. Hard shell, can pull themselves into their shell if they need to. Now, the next thing that sort of sets the Pirates of Pugmire section apart from the rest of the Realms of Pugmire is firearms. They do have, well, flintlock firearms. Mostly in the forms of pistols, though some cannons exist, for the ships. But that's kind of a little bit extra there, because every ship have their own articles. Now, what articles are basically the 3 rules a ship has to follow. The 3 rules agreed upon by the entire crew. 2 of these are things that they must do. 1 is something that they can't do. Like, you might have a ship that is divide all plunder equally among the crew, help those in need, and never leave a crewman behind. That's the sorts of things that they will agree upon. 3 basic rules that define these ships' way of doing things. The prohibition is an automatic you're off the crew. A captain breaks the prohibition, they've opened up for a mutiny. And that's pretty much the core of the setting for the Pirates of Pugmire. You're pretty much going out into the acid sea. There's a number of known locations out there, but at the same time, you're exploring. You're looking at the edge of the map and going, what's past there? For fame and glory. and maybe even payment from a patron. For example, there is a cat in Waterdog Port who hires crews to go exploring regions on the map where ships have gone but not come back. Pays handsomely because he was once a brave pirate himself. But that is the setting for Pirates of Pugmire. Next week, I will talk about the mechanics for Pirates of Pugmire. So until then, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.